Hello everyone. My name is Björn Jerdén, and I head the Asia program at the Swedish Institute of International Affairs. And I'm chairing this next panel on tried and tested building for the future. We got three speakers. From left, Börje Ljunggren, former Swedish ambassador to China and Vietnam. Stein Tønnesson, leader of the program on the East Asian Peace at Uppsala University. And Marie Söderberg, director at the European Institute of Japanese Studies here in Handels. And I could spend much more time to introduce you, but I won't do that because I think it's better that we jump right into what we want to talk about. And that is tried and tested by you about research on Asia. I think it's a collective. You represent well over a century of experience of academic research, but also other kind of knowledge production about Asia within media, the foreign services, and Track 2. So what I would like to ask you about is that you share with us here about your experiences, what worked, what didn't work, and that is tried and tested, but also building for the future. How can we today, within the Swedish research community about Asia, learn from these experiences? And you are all very much active today, so you know that the situation, both when it comes to Asia's role in the world, its relation with Sweden, but also the research environment in Sweden, and the conditions that we face are different today than they used to be. So we will start with 10 minutes each, and after that I hope we can open up for comments and questions from the audience. And we do it in the order from the program, and I would like to ask Stein to start.
The organizer has told me in no uncertain terms that I'm not allowed to speak about Asia, but about the Asia research and the experiences. So I will tell you 11 good things that I have done and 5 mistakes. I have, for the last 6 years, spent 38 million Swedish kroner on a research program about East Asian peace based at Uppsala University. The first good thing that I did was to apply to Riksbankens Jubileumsfond, represented here by Göran Blomqvist. Because Riksbankens Jubileumsfond is my ideal funder. It has a small, competent staff. It does not bother too much with detail when it comes to reporting. It's really keen on the content of the research. It was also a good idea to base it at Uppsala University, at the Department of Peace and Conflict Research, where we have a very close relationship between them and my institution, Peace Research Institute Oslo. We actually exchange all the time. In the beginning, I applied from SIPRI together with Cynthia here, but I saw that for an academic funder like Riksbankens Jubileumsfond, you really need to have a basis in a solid university that is clearly academic. The second good thing that we did was to concentrate this program on just 2 questions. One question was to explain how could East Asia, which used to have so much war, enter into a period with relative peace. And the second question was, how deep is this peace? Is it sustainable? These are the 2 questions that we decided on, and I think it convinced the funder that we were concentrating on them. In order to research them, we also decided, and this is the third good thing, we decided on a very clear dependent variable. The dependent variable that we chose as an indicator for peace or lack of peace was battle deaths, number of battle deaths. And we found that East Asia had 80% of global battle deaths in the period 1946 to 79. Then it declined to 6.2% in the 1980s. And then since 1990, it has been 1.7%. Last year, it was 0.7%. And this is a region with 30% of the world's population. This was the observation that we used as a basis for the whole research program and that we wanted to understand. The next good thing, I don't think I can reckon the numbers any longer. The next good thing was that we decided to instead of seeking a consensus answer, we sought to develop rival competitive theories within the program. So some would work from realist perspective, looking at power, others would look at culture, and some would look at policies. And we have developed different theories. This is reflected also in our publications, very different theories. This could be seen as negative, and there is actually was a criticism that I received when I presented our work in Oslo 2 days ago, that they wanted us to have established more of a total theory to explain it. But I stick to the idea that I think that cultivating these rival theories was a good choice. Next good thing, we decided really seriously to mainstream gender. In the beginning, I thought it was very difficult. How can I get gender perspectives into the two kind of questions we had asked? But we found, and this is one of the breakthroughs in the program, we found that the normal idea that gender equality is positively associated with peace is not actually true for some special reasons. But if you look at gender equality values measured in service, you find a very, very strong association. And this is also associated with tolerance for minorities. This is one of the findings that we have brought through in article publications. Now I come to the first mistake. I did not quite understand my role as a leader from the beginning. Riksbankens Jubileumsfond expects a leader of a program to have a very high authority, not to bind all the funds from the beginning into certain budget lines where you are obliged towards the people that you contract. People should not have social security through a research program. Instead, they want the leader to be flexible and able to change course along the way when you see things going well and things going bad. If you have someone doing a really good job, you boost the funding. If you have someone doing a bad job, you reduce the funding. So I had to adjust to that along the way, and it went against my more democratic principles, but I think it's actually a good idea in order to generate good research. We also did a good thing was to combine a core group in Uppsala with 7 members with 23 research associates in different countries. Also in Sweden, and I think 2 of them are here, Linus Hagström and Mikael Weissman. This has also provided a hosting environment for our annual conferences. So we've had big annual conferences in Seoul, Beijing, Hanoi, and Singapore. And then the first and the last conference were in Uppsala. We have had, this has assured a kind of natural network. We have also an advisory board which has been extremely helpful along the way, where Börje Ljunggren has been a member and has been led by Peter Wallenstein at Uppsala University. But there we come to the next mistake. Absolutely embarrassing. When we put together the advisory board, we did not recruit one single woman. So it is an all-male advisory board, and it's been a source of shame all the way through. I also would say that we have not been sufficiently good at inserting our program in the Asia research community in Sweden. And particularly I see that people who are in Uppsala, who are not in the Department of Peace and Conflict Research, have no idea about what we are doing. So the link between Oslo and the Department of Uppsala is much stronger than to other research environments in Sweden. And then there is also one other, perhaps bigger mistake or failure, and this is that we have not been able to build a kind of cohesive group that would want to continue to work together and to have obtained funding for a continuation. So in a way, the whole program is now being split up in a number of Asia-related projects that the various members have developed for themselves as individuals instead of working as a group. But academics are a lot like that. They have individual ideas that they want to pursue. So it has not been easy, but I still must consider it a failure. The last point I want to mention is outreach. We were aimed immediately from the beginning for mainly producing journal articles in peer-reviewed journals. And this we have done to a very great extent. and you find the list on our website. We have also produced a few books, and we have done that with NIAS Press. David Stalligras here is representing NIAS Press, and he has, among the books from NIAS Press, he also has our books there, which some of them are for sale. I was criticized 2 days ago also in Oslo for the choice of NIAS Press. They said you should have chosen a big university press. This would have reached a wider audience. I replied, yes, it would have reached a wider audience among academics in the United States. But with NIAS Press, first of all, you get it out fully updated because they are quick. You get excellent work on the language, actually done by David himself. And you have a network of booksellers in Asia, so you can actually get to see the books in the bookstores in Asia. In addition, the price is low. So all of these things, I think, really make this the best choice. We've also made film, but I will end with a failure here too. And this is an apology or failure to heed the advice that I got at one point in Bangkok by Eva Hansson, who is also here. And this was that she tried to teach me to use Twitter. And we have not had a high profile on social media. I did not follow up that lesson on Twitter, and it's only just recently that I have realized this enormous failure of not promoting the program as such through the social media. I thought I could leave that to the relevant people at Uppsala University. Now I understand it because I work now much of the time in Myanmar, and I've seen that in Myanmar now everything is Facebook. People who have not used email, who have not had telephone, they have gone directly to a smartphone with Facebook. And when Urban Ahlin talked about the 349 people looking at the smartphones in the Swedish parliament, I can tell you it's exactly the same in the parliament in Naypyidaw, where they are chatting with each other on Facebook while things are going on, and the only communication is that. So now I want personally to generate a research project on the effect of social media on armed conflict in a country with widespread armed conflict. If someone wants to work with me on that or have ideas for me, please contact me.
Thank you, Stein, for that excellent, very hands-on advice. And the next speaker is Börje Ljunggren.
Thank you. Very nice to be here, and I think this is a very good initiative. We have an obvious need to focus, to take stock, and to develop new forms of research cooperation. We are, I would say, behind the timeline right now. I'm asked to talk about the Asia strategy that I was involved in together with Lisbeth, over there, Lisbeth 20 years ago. But I would like to, and I've told the chair that I would also like to make some more general remarks. And I start by referring to Stein's work, which has been so enormously important. I only have to disagree on one point. He was a very capable and very efficient and overwhelming leader of this project. And I think it's the way that you managed to gather international scholars and so forth was incredible. But of course, what he told in the last, when he spoke about 0.7% last year, when it comes to battle death, it's very important. What we have enjoyed without fully understanding it is the long East Asian peace, the long Asian peace. China has not been involved in wars since '79 when invading Vietnam, except for tensions and certainly in border wars, border tension with Vietnam in particular. It's quite exceptional. But we also know that we have some of the largest and most serious conflicts in the world, remaining ones. And some of them will become even more serious, some are acute, like the North Korean one. So we are witnessing what you think a drift towards a more fragile peace. And also we have seen a drift, which I think is very significant, from an economic Asia, very strong focus on economic growth since China started to grow in particular, and launch reforms. But we see now a drift towards a more of a security-driven Asia, which is serious. So it's a fragile peace. And underneath this, of course, you have the fundamental fact there's a power shift occurring, that China is becoming such a major factor. And as an inevitable consequence, you have US-Chinese strategic distrust. You will witness this as long as you live. It's unavoidable, and the question is to cope, to manage. And of course, the most interesting work that's coming out right now is Graham Allison's book, Destined for War, on this very issue, and based it on the Thucydides trap. The last 500 years, 12 out of 16 major power shifts have led to war. I certainly don't think it's inevitable, certainly not, and especially not in the nuclear age. But it's a very profound kind of strategic competition that we will experience. In the midst of this, of course, Asia has become increasingly important. And I'd like to list, before I get into the Asia study, just very quickly, a few aspects which I think are key to, because we are facing a paradigmic kind of situation right now. First of all, globalization. We have experienced an anti-globalization kind of development and mood emerging from the shapers of globalization, not from emerging countries. China has profited more than any other country. Second, the liberal economic order is questioned. By who? By the US, by the architect. Pax Americana is undermined from within, and also through the development of the landscape, geopolitical landscape. The idea of governing the world is losing ground. Democracy is on retreat. You know, the third wave beginning in 74, 75. Defense of human rights is weaker than in a long time. Terrorism is not about to fade away. China has become the unlikely guardian of the Paris Agreement, with the US abdicating. The global economic order that we are witnessing is not sustainable. And I think the most significant, the most simple illustration is the fact that 8 families in the world have wealth jointly amounting to the same volume as half of mankind. How could it happen? How could it happen? But also, we are also outdated when it comes to very positive development. For example, poverty development and reduction in China. Maybe 700 million people less under the poverty line than 35 years ago. And the fact in all this is that Asia matters more than ever. I saw a recent report by ADB saying that when it comes to global economic growth 2017, 60% is generated in Asia. And then I don't even include Japan there. Just think about it. Then to the Asia strategy quickly. The background was, of course, that in the early 90s, you can see very clearly how Asia was becoming more and more significant. And one example, when I looked into my bookshelf now, was the Asian Miracle Study, World Bank, 1993. That was, they focused on Japan, of course, but also on the tiger economies and the newly industrialized economies. Japan was dominating. Japan was then, like Esther Fogel talked about, Japan was number one. It was already drifting away from that position, but still. And you talked about this geese formation, Japan being there, other countries coming up behind. It sounds a bit unreal today. China was not fully in focus yet. China didn't enter WTO until 2001, as you know, but China was certainly there. Asian values was a big discussion. Would you really need to pay attention to institutions the way we stressed it, through transparency with the way we discussed it and so forth? And then came the financial crisis, 97. There were many reasons behind it. It shouldn't be a shock, but still, it was a bit of a shock. Krugman wrote, I remember, that this was because in Asia there was more perspiration than inspiration. It was excessive lending, over-investment, rather than innovative kind of thinking. Then, of course, in 96, I was asked whether I would be ready to returning from Vietnam to get involved in this in a rather ambitious Asia study. It was Mats Carlson, then State Secretary, who now head of EV today, who came with the idea. And when I now went down to my basement library at home and looked at some of the literature that we produced and the report that we produced in Swedish and English, I was actually quite surprised by how comprehensive it was. Broad-based, long-term. There was a government decision in 97. Mats and another State Secretary for Trade They were co-sharing it. It was secretariat with Lisbon and me and a few others. It was, but I want to stress, referring to learning, was very much a process, very much a process. We had a task force of more than 30 persons coming from academia, government, business. And actually that task force was turned into a reference group after we had submitted our study. So it remained for many years. I thought it was a very useful thing to have. We also involved each and every embassy. Each and every embassy produced reports assessing development in that particular country. We had hearings. We produced a couple of volumes of background studies with Peter Wallenstein and Ari Kokko and international scholars. And it was all presented to Anna Lindh as foreign minister in the fall of '98. We had a year. And then also there was a government submission, a communication, somewhat later. And I looked through it quickly now. And the opening sentence is, the development in the world during decades to come is closely linked to development in Asia. It could have been said even more boldly, but that's what was said. And there was a strong focus on globalization, on trade, foreign direct investment, also on security, the environment. I remember when we launched it, Anna Lindh's main focus was on the environment. Of course, human rights, popular moments. And China was certainly there. The way China develops is a principal factor in development of Asia as a whole. It was '98. There was a strong stress, I like to say, on research cooperation and on the developing research in Asia. Of course, already then we had CEPAS, some of you remember, Tom Hart, heading the Institute for East Asian Studies at Stockholm University. The center that Magdalena Svensson now is heading in Lund for East Asian Studies was launched in '97, partly as a consequence of this focus. And also SASNet, the network on South Asia, was created right then. So that was important. And I would say that today, as I look around, I think the resources are quite scattered, underfunded. I cannot detect a strategic focus, really. There's a great need for collaboration and coordination, scope to design new research projects. I'm glad that Jerdén is here for Riksbank to get this from, because that's a key institution, of course, if we are able to shape something that's the way Stein did. And today we are witnessing nothing less than a global shift also in knowledge production. Don't forget that. We experienced a global shift in knowledge production. Neil Ferguson, he published a book a few years ago about, he called it The West and the Rest. The point was that the West was now emerging. I think that the rest is really moving. The rest is really growing significant. And we are again behind the timeline. And Asia is at the very center of all this. And we have to see it in a global context, of course. Great uncertainties, great possibilities, but we are not fully tuned in. I hope that this conference will give a boost. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Börje. And Niklas told me before that you have the hardest task to keep these people to respect the time frame. But it's no problem at all. No problem at all. The next speaker is Marie, please.
Yes. Thank you. I am not going to speak on any specific project. I have several during my years as a researcher. I'm not going to speak about my institute that much either, but really about what I think has worked and hasn't worked in research on Asia. I think the Asian strategy was very good, and so was the stint and Riksbanken's promotion of Asia during a couple of years. That gave some initiatives to start working on Asia and doing more on Asia. And I agree with Börje, more is needed and more structured and focused. Of course, all researchers think this. But at the same time, I also think it's a lot about people, choosing the right people, having the right people going forward. This is really important for research and for research cooperation. One of the things where I think I had some success is actually establishing a European network on Japanese studies. It's called European-Japan Advanced Research Network. On a European level, we started now 10 years ago, and we are meeting every year. And through this network, I myself got out of the small Swedish community also. We have other people there. They have connections with Konrad Adenauer foundations and with Toshiba now we have in Japan, of course, very close. We have Japan Foundation. So by going together, we are actually able to make a lot of common research. And I think that is something where Sweden should also not only stay in Sweden, but also go outside, because research is very specific, so you need to find your partners also outside. I also think having good Asian partners is very, very important. After all, Asia is our study object, so we really need the good Asian partners. It's also about, and this brings me back actually to Cecilia's talk about the Swedish Ministry of Foreign Affairs not having very many people with deep knowledge on Asia. One of the first things this European network did was we went down to Brussels. We had read was something called the action plan between Japan and the EU at that time. It talked about centers of excellence in the academic field and so forth. And we went down there and we said, here we are, let's start. We found out 8 years already passed. There was no budget behind it. Nothing had happened. So it's not only Sweden, it's on the European level as well. We saw the Japan desk, 2 people, rather junior, I would say. And we understood there's no way there's going to come up anything new from here. Who is to do the work? And we realized it has to be us. And I think that goes for everyone here, because we can't expect, with all due respect, government officials to have any real fantastic ideas of how we should increase cooperation or how we should create peace and security in the world. It has to come from academics, much more ideas and much more forward-looking things than what we have seen so far. I also think we had, of course, the spokesperson of the parliament, and also we speak about Sweden, and even Fredrik Scholl spoke about Sweden and how Sweden could be promoted in Asia. It's your job, so of course this should be done. But I really think we have to also not only promote Sweden, but Sweden has to listen to Asia and what is happening out in Asia to another extent than what we have done before, when we have the model and everyone wants to come here and have a look at it. Now we are being overrun by what is happening in Asia. And in my field of research, which is on official development assistance, this is very, very clear. It's no longer the Swedish or even the European ideas that are governing the process. It's a pivot to Asia, where there are Asian deals and Asian ways of moving that we are going to be adapting to. So we need to know and listen to what's happening in Asia. I think that's the biggest failure with Swedish Asia research so far. I don't mean we should promote the Asian model because we have our own model, but we should be aware of it. Without that, there is not going to be any success for Sweden in the future. I think that's very important. I also think the visions, having visions. We established something called that Stockholm should be the hub of Japanese studies in Europe. We decided that 6 or 7 years ago. We have been working persistently towards that goal. And it's just a kind of saying, we should be the hub of Japanese studies in Europe. But when it comes to a number of decisions, we have to take that into consideration. We now have a seminar series called Stockholm Seminar on Japan. We had our 71st seminar the other week. It keeps us going and also working together. This is a project between me and the Swedish Institute of, my institute, European Institute of Japanese Studies, and also Swedish Institute of International Affairs, Stockholm University, and the Defense University. So it keeps us together and keeps us moving forward. I think cooperation is also key for a future in Sweden. But looking back, I think a few more initiatives right now would be very important for Swedish Asia research. And maybe I stop there because otherwise we won't have time for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria. So thank you very much to our three speakers, and let's then open up the floor for questions from the audience. And please start by introducing yourself, and please try to keep it fairly short as well. So do we have any hands? Lars Varje.
If I may, I'm Lars Varje. I'm now working at the ISTP. I'm a former Swedish ambassador to Japan and South Korea. I was intrigued by Marie's statement that, many good statements, let me say that first, but that the government officials really have no role in leading us forward. And I think that there you are wrong. You need cooperation also between government officials and academics and politicians, and so one shouldn't exclude any category.
No. Can I just?
You can reply.
I definitely agree, and that wasn't my intention. I was just thinking about why they were talking so much and why the Swedish model should be promoted. I think it's very important that Sweden is also listening.
Thank you. Marina?
My name is Marina Svensson. I'm from the Center for East and Southeast Asian Studies at Björn University. I also agree with a lot of points what all of you said, actually, but I want to pick up on one thing that Marie said in particular, and that was the collaboration with Asian partners and Asian scholars, because I think that is crucial for theory building about Asian societies and how we can sort of encourage. I mean, I see there's a lot of PhD students, some I know from coming from China, being based here. But this is also something I see as a way forward.
But I must say that it has also been fun to see how having partners in East Asia leads you into the real changes. So one of our research associates was leading the government panel in the negotiations with the Moros in the Philippines. And now I have the pleasure of seeing one other research associate, most probably becoming a foreign policy advisor to the new South Korean president.
Yeah, of course, I stress the fact that you also have a global shift in knowledge production. And from that follows, of course, that to design any kind of major project without having collaborators, partners in Asia would be odd. And of course also turning to the distinguished head of the Asian department, I would say that, of course, if you saw a possibility of launching something where we in depth looked at Asia, East Asia again, and in a global context this time. That's why I listed this dimension, but I don't think we can just make it an Asia study. But I think if you could involve the research community, policy people, and of course Jerdén is the other key person from Riksbanksfond. I think that is, we need to really give a boost. So to just say 5 years from now that this is what it was like then, and largely the same picture 5 years later, that would have been sad. So I don't have any specific suggestions, but I can assure you that by mobilizing something, a lot can happen.
Yeah, sure. Hi, I'm Christina Simeon. I'm a Myanmar researcher from the Australian National University based in Stockholm. So my question is for Stein, and I recognize all the issues you raised with using Facebook in Myanmar. A lot of my friends will post horrendous pictures of dead people, and youth will self-harm and post pictures about that. So it's also very interesting to think about the culture of violence, the communal violence that this has an effect on, and the complete lack of source critique. But I was wondering, from a research ethics perspective, how do you design a study that analyzes social media in a country where people use social media very openly, but where the military still arrests people by tracking their IP addresses? So it's a very open environment, but it's still quite risky for some individuals to use social media.
perhaps the most welcome question I could get, because this is what I'm struggling with now, and the deadline in the Research Council of Norway is 24th of May. But I really don't know yet how to do this. I've been thinking that I must first, in a way, more observe what is happening, both by using the social media myself and by working with a close partner who uses the social media. And my closest partner in Myanmar has about 3,000 friends on Facebook, and he is centrally placed, uses Facebook as his main source for breaking news. And I have heard from our partner Elin Bjarnegård that when she wanted to interview people among the MPs in Naypyidaw, she needed to contact them on Messenger, because that was the only way. And she could be, after she had realized that, instead of trying to call anyone or writing emails, she could have 5 MPs chatting with her at the same time. And this is the way that they operated as well. And it's been confirmed to me that the armed groups are doing the same thing. They also have Facebook. How do they hide where they are if they are on Facebook, and everything they do there can be read? Well, how does that affect the number of incidents? These are things that I want to find out. I've also realized that the Tatmadaw, the army, of course, has understood all this and has a whole floor with people who are just monitoring Facebook all the time. But I don't know what kind, I've not found out in what direction I can ask the causal questions. But I want to know, does this increase the arms fighting, or does it reduce it? There is one effect I've seen.
I think.
Stop me.
Questions remain unanswered, but Stein's deadline is coming up, and maybe we just witnessed a new research collaboration in action, which is, one objective of this conference. I think we have time for 2 more short questions, and we have the gentleman here first, and then the lady up there, please.
Stockholm University. I think the panel has a collective capacity to respond to my question on, you could say, knowledge tactics or knowledge strategy. The one thing is that we have to have pinpointed, high-quality understanding of the parts of the Asian type of sphere, like the Japanese, like the Chinese, the Korean, Myanmar, or whatever it is. On the other side, we also have, as some of you have stressed, issue orientation for the area as a whole. Issues like peace, development models, trade, environment, ICT challenges, and things like that. And they are not necessarily sort of embedded in one of these national entities, but the national sort of nodal points are the deliverables of such type of thematic interest. So there is a need for 2 types of dimensions of connectivities. So how do you in the panel handle these 2 dimensions of the knowledge tactics?
Thank you, and we take the last question now as well. Please, the lady up there. I don't know really if we have a working microphone. Let's try it without.
What worries me is the application of research. If we have a Center for Japanese Studies, which is very well established and so on, then suddenly another Japanese center in the same city. Stockholm is small. Sweden is a small country. How are you using your resources? Do you separate the research? Do you have specific research in this entity or so? Because if you organize a seminar, let's say, and most of us who are interested would like to come and it's the same day, where do we go? And this resource that you have, how do you communicate? How did you see through the years? What is the reciprocity from the countries you are researching on Sweden? How to improve and use this knowledge to improve not only research societies, but also to improve
Right.
Why do we neglect certain countries in Asia?
Yeah, thank you very much. I think it was 2 points there. First, coordination within Sweden and also coordination between Sweden and Asia. So could I then ask the panel to try to answer these last two questions and to wrap it up in 2-3 minutes? You want to start, Marie?
Yes. Of course, it's not only the region, it's the issues also. And I think modern research does not only, area research is very important, but we also need to pick the issues and collaborate on the issues with people who work on issues like peace and security or development. We need to bring other scholars in to the field as well. So there should be both dimensions in any research, I think. And I think there is a lot of cooperation going on in Sweden. Even if we have a new Japan Institute, I mean, we are friends, Lars and I, and we, I mean, at your first seminar, there were people from my institute as speaker and also as discussant. So I don't see any real problem there. And the Stockholm seminar on Japan is an example where we actually cooperate 4 institutions together, which is a very good pattern so that we don't compete when we have Japanese seminars here in Stockholm.
Stein?
What I say now may be an exaggeration, but I don't think it matters so much now where you are, in what city or where you sit or where you have your office, because the world is completely open. So what matters is who you communicate with and how you do it and how you manage your communication style, what means you use. And they vary a little bit from country to country. This I think that the term that you used with nodes, that's a good one, because these are communication nodes, but they are not necessarily national. It's already now the case that when I communicate through Facebook and I get a message in a language I don't know, they offer a kind of crude translation, and immediately, so you can just click it and get the crude translation. So the communication opportunities are enormous related to what we have been used to. And this, I think, at least younger researchers must just see these tremendous opportunities and not be obsessed by ideas about institution building.
Thank you, Stein. And we give Börje the last word.
I would rather, when wrapping up, return to the question that you were discussing when it comes to internet and so forth, and how that affects not only research but so far beyond. And I'd like to take as a point of departure when China entered the WTO. The crucial supporter of this was Clinton. And when he explained it in the US, he said that from this we follow, this is good for us, he said, good for America. And he said, from this we follow not only China's development, but also because of the internet and so forth. He said China will open up also politically. He said to try to hinder that would be like trying to make yellow pudding stick to a wall. It's impossible, he said. And then if you look at the situation now, you must conclude that, and I was very mistaken in my first book on China in 2008, I overstressed the importance of the internet when it comes to its impact on China. I think the response that power, you may say, has used the internet in an immensely skillful way, in a comprehensive way. And of course, internet sovereignty is today a key concept. And the biggest e-trader in the world, Alibaba, they have 400 million registered clients. They know everything about these 400 million clients. The government, a party now in China, wants to do the same. They want to know each and everything about each citizen, and it's technically perfectly possible. So I think we are into a world which is very complex, and not the Clinton vision didn't hold.
Thank you very much, and let's give our panelists